Bored? I hope not. Believe me, worms, hay fever, and antihistamines make funny company. In the last lesson, we learned that we're not alone in this body, that we live with trillions of friendly bacteria, our microbiome. Did you know that over 2 billion people, more than 25% of the world's population, share their bodies with other organisms as well? These, however, are not so friendly. Parasitic worms infest the vast majority of people living in poverty in Africa, Asia, and South America. Parasitic worms are generally divided into two main groups, flatworms and roundworms. The flatworms include tapeworms and flukes. The roundworms, like hookworms and whipworms, are also very common. If you've never heard or encountered these parasites or don't know anybody who has, then you're probably living in a developed country with all the benefits of modern plumbing, sanitized food, and high-quality drinking water. Worms often infest our gut, although lungs, skin, and blood can also be infected. Mature worms lay eggs that we excrete in our waste. If sewage is openly flowing and unattended, or waste is used as fertilizer, the eggs hatch in the ground and develop into larvae. When walking barefoot on moist, infected soil, the larvae can latch onto our skin, penetrate and circulate through our bloodstream, and may ultimately infect our lungs. Should we cough up the parasite and swallow it, our gut becomes the permanent home, and the worms can live there for years, feeding off of us. So imagine the challenge. Our immune system now has to tackle parasites that, compared to macrophages or lymphocytes, are much too big to chew. Our immune system has had to develop other means to expel these monsters. For this, unique sentinel cells stand guard throughout our bodies. These guards are mast cells, special cells with multiple functions that mediate between the innate system and the adaptive immunity. Mast cells are covered with TLRs and effector signal receptors for IgG, IgA, and especially for IgE. Mast cells are also chock full of special weaponry, 50 to 200 secretion granules loaded with very potent chemical reagents that can be released on the spot to lead to violent, explosive reactions. One major reagent is histamine. Trust me, you don't want mast cells discharging their contents by mistake. So in order to regulate and control mast cell activity, IgE antibodies play a special role, the cell's trigger safety mechanism. IgEs are different from other immunoglobulins. Instead of floating around in circulation, mast cells harness the IgEs to their surface through special receptors that bind the IgE effector signal tenaciously, all this even before the antibody binds its antigen. Thus, each mast cell becomes decorated with a variety of IgEs just waiting to recognize and bind the repertoire of unique signature epitopes of the parasites. When parasitic worms encounter mast cells armed with parasite-specific IgEs, the load of the granules is released and a burst of histamine goes to work with only one objective in mind: get this worm out of me. Histamine affects us in a number of ways. It increases blood vessel permeability, leading to swelling and inflammation in the infected area. It acts on smooth muscles, which constrict airways. It can tantalize nerve endings, causing us to itch. It stimulates mucus secretion. These and other reactions translate into coughing, sneezing, and wheezing, vomiting and explosive diarrhea, scratching and itching. All these reactions are designed to dislodge worms from our gut, the linings of our lungs, or from our skin. The IgE mast cell reaction has evolved to eject and expel parasites too big to eat. Surprisingly, here's where the advancements of modern technology, hygiene, and sanitation have paradoxically turned things topsy-turvy. In the developed world, sanitation ensures a clean environment, water and food that are highly regulated, and our houses are practically sterile. Our children don't roll around in worm-infested soil. Our mast cell IgE defenses are practically unemployed, bored, and looking for things to do. Curiously, many totally innocuous proteins like cat dander, excretions of dust mites, pollen, and peanut proteins are mistaken as potential threats. It's not clear why, but for some of us, in the absence of real threats, IgE antibodies are raised against these harmless antigens. When mast cells covered with these IgEs encounter dust, peanuts, or pollen, the explosive responses designed to counteract parasites are launched. This is clearly a violent overreaction in the absence of any real danger. This explosive response to benign antigens is what we experience as an allergic response. Over the last century, as sanitation and hygiene have greatly improved, we are witnessing an escalation, a dramatic rise in allergies, especially in the developed world. As we've cleaned up our surroundings and reduced the exposure to parasites, our immune defenses have adopted alternative targets, allergens, totally harmless proteins, misinterpreted as genuine threats. As a result, food allergies, hay fever, and asthma are all on the rise. We find ourselves in the midst of an allergy epidemic.